Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today, we're diving into the dark side of history with a look at some of the most infamous and frankly ungodly popes in the history of the Catholic Church. Now, it's important to remember that the papacy is an incredibly old institution, and like any institution that's been around for centuries, it's had its fair share of scandals and controversies. But we're not just talking about your run-of-the-mill disagreements over doctrine or church policy here. We're talking about popes who were accused of everything from murder and incest to simony and sorcery. So buckle up, because we're about to meet some of the most morally questionable figures ever to wear the papal tiara. Get ready for tales of intrigue, corruption, and a whole lot of drama, because the history of the papacy is anything but boring. Our first stop on this journey through papal misdeeds takes us to the heart of the Italian Renaissance and the reign of Pope Alexander VI, who held the papacy from 1492 to 1503. Alexander VI, born Rodrigo Borgia, was a member of the powerful Borgia family, and he brought with him to the papacy a reputation for, shall we say, a certain lack of restraint. Alexander VI's papacy was a time of rampant nepotism, with the Pope shamelessly promoting his own family members to positions of power within the church. He appointed his son Cesare, who was rumoured to be the product of an incestuous relationship, as a cardinal. He was also rumoured to have fathered several illegitimate children, engaged in numerous affairs, and even hosted lavish orgies within the Vatican itself. One particularly infamous story tells of the Banquet of Chestnuts, supposedly held by Cesare Borgia in 1501, where 50 courtesans were said to have entertained the Pope and his guests. It's no wonder that Alexander VI's papacy is often cited as a prime example of the Church's moral decline during the Renaissance. He was a man who seemed to embody the excesses and corruption of the era, and his actions left an undeniable stain on the papacy. For our next tale of papal misconduct, we're travelling back to the 10th century, a period known as the Saeculum Obscurum, or Dark Age of the papacy. We're going to meet Pope John XIV, who became pope at the ripe old age of 18 and ruled from 955 to 964. John XIV's papacy was a whirlwind of debauchery, violence, and all-around bad behaviour. This was a pope who was said to have turned the Lateran Palace, one of the holiest sites in Christendom, into a veritable brothel. He was accused of having sexual relations with countless women, including allegedly his own mother and sister. But John XIV wasn't just a lover, he was a fighter too. He was known for his violent temper and was accused of murder, blinding his enemies, and even invoking pagan gods while gambling. Eventually, John XIII's antics caught up with him. He was deposed by a council of bishops in 963, but not before putting up a fight. He retaliated by leading a military campaign against Rome. John XIV's papacy may have been short, but it was certainly not sweet. He left behind a legacy of corruption and violence that further tarnished the reputation of the papacy during an already tumultuous period. Hold on to your hats, folks, because this next story is truly bizarre, even by papal standards. We're talking about Pope Stephen VI and the infamous Cadaver Synod of 897. Stephen VI had a grudge against his predecessor, Pope Formosus. Formosus had been deposed and excommunicated a few years earlier, but then he died, and apparently that wasn't enough for Stephen. He decided that Formosus needed to be put on trial even though he was dead, so what did Stephen VI do? He had Formosus's corpse exhumed, dressed in full papal regalia, and propped up on a throne in the Basilica of St. John Lateran. Stephen VI then proceeded to put Formosus's rotting corpse on trial for crimes like perjury and violating canon law. The trial was a sham. Stephen VI found Formosus guilty on all charges. The corpse was stripped of its papal vestments, 3 of its fingers were chopped off, and it was dragged through the streets of Rome before being dumped in the Tiber River. Stephen VI's macabre spectacle backfired spectacularly. He was eventually imprisoned and, according to some accounts, strangled to death by his own followers. We're now entering the 11th century, a time of widespread corruption and moral decay within the Church. And folks, it doesn't get much more corrupt than Pope Benedict IX. Benedict IX served as Pope 3 times and was accused of rape, murder, and bestiality. He first became Pope in 1032, possibly as young as 12. His papacy was so scandalous that one historian called him a demon from hell. In 1044 he fled Rome after an attack but returned briefly. He even sold the papacy to his godfather Gregory VI. Benedict IX's papacy is a dark stain on the history of the Catholic Church. Our final stop on this whirlwind tour of papal infamy takes us to the 14th century, a time of great upheaval and division within the Catholic Church. Get ready to meet Pope Urban VI, whose reign was marked by paranoia, cruelty, and a whole lot of drama. Urban VI became Pope in 1378 after the death of Pope Gregory VI. He was seen as a reformer, someone who could help clean up the corruption and decadence that had plagued the Church for centuries. But as it turned out, Urban VI was not the saviour the Church was hoping for. He quickly gained a reputation for being incredibly harsh and unforgiving. He publicly berated and humiliated his cardinals, even accusing them of plotting against him. Urban VI was so paranoid that he had several of his cardinals arrested, tortured and executed. Unsurprisingly, Urban VI's behaviour didn't sit well with everyone. A group of cardinals eventually declared his election invalid, claiming that they had been pressured to vote for him under duress. They then elected a new pope, Clement VII, and thus began the Western Schism, a period of nearly 40 years when the Catholic Church had two and sometimes even three rival popes, each claiming to be the true vicar of Christ. The Western Schism was a disaster for the Catholic Church. It further damaged the papacy's already tarnished reputation and sowed discord and confusion among the faithful. So there you have it, folks, a glimpse into the lives of some of the most infamous popes in history. From Alexander VI's scandalous affairs to John XIII's debauched reign to the sheer absurdity of the Cadaver Synod, these popes certainly left their mark on the Catholic Church, and not in a good way. Their stories are a reminder that even the most powerful institutions are susceptible to corruption and abuse of power. Thanks for watching. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more historical deep dives. See you next time.